Good afternoon, everyone. Is my mic on? That's always my first question. All right, thank you back there. Well, good afternoon and welcome. Most of you know me. I see a lot of people from Peggy's Unitarian community here, but I see folks from other communities that were part of Peggy's life. My name is Lynn Nugent, and I'm a lay chaplain with the Calgary Unitarians. It's my honor to officiate Peggy's ceremony this afternoon. This community was Peggy's spiritual home for many years. I also wish to thank those in our community who have made it possible for us to honor Peggy this afternoon. Thank you, Ev Dewar and Brandis Purcell, who are going to lead the songs. And a big thank you to Jim Washbrook, and I see Mitchell back there in the AV booth. And I'll tell you, things have gotten so complicated back there. I just do what I'm told. I don't even try to get involved with it. So thank you very, very much, you guys. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you all to a reception that the family are hosting in Wickenden Hall after the service. Please come and join them in drinking a sherry toast to Peggy. There'll also be tea, coffee, and treats. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with our building, there's one washroom on the main floor, and you'll find more washrooms downstairs. Now, if you have not yet silenced your phone, would you please do that so that we can create a sacred space for the honoring of Peggy's life? Just let everybody have a chance to fish around and those phones. Nobody wants to be the one that rings in the middle of the ceremony. Thank you all. So we'll now go on to our chalice lighting. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It's the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. So we are gathered here today to mourn the death and to celebrate the life of Margaret Audrey Stafford Raitt, better known to all of us as Peggy. Peggy was born July 10th, 1920 in Preston, Lancashire, England, and died in Calgary on June 13th, 2022. Peggy passed away in her room at the Edgemont Retirement Residence at the age of 101. Now I know, for those of you that read our church e-news, I said 102, but hey, she was really close. And I thought we should give her credit for it. No matter the age, it's never easy to say goodbye. We hold in our hearts today Peggy's family, daughter Heather and her husband Clarence, Peggy's son Jonathan, John, her grandchildren and their partners, Matt and Brenna, Nathan and Christina, Teresa and Mike, and great-grandsons Colin and Connor and his partner Madison and her daughter Peyton. Peggy lived a long and active life. I made Peggy's acquaintance when she was in her 80s. She enjoyed participating in some of our religious exploration programs. She had a sharp, inquiring mind, and she enjoyed our discussions. This became increasingly difficult with her hearing loss, and I'm sure it was a matter of great frustration for her. Once when I was facilitating a program, she asked if she could participate, and we tried very hard to make it work for her. The person sitting next to her would write her notes if Peggy wasn't catching enough to understand what was said. Peggy attended church well into her 90s. She would roll in with her walker, request her cup of tea, and sit down to enjoy the Sunday service. As I had the privilege of learning more about Peggy's earlier life, it seems apt to quote the poet and naturalist Diane Ackerman. Diane says, "I don't want to get to the end of my life and find that I have just lived the length of it. I want to have lived the width of it as well." And Peggy certainly lived the width as well as the length of her life, as she pursued many interests and had many volunteer activities and a long career as well. She served with the American Red Cross from 1944 to 1946, and then spent 3 months volunteering in Europe. Peggy loved hiking and was passionate about social justice and environmental protection. She volunteered with several organizations, including UNICEF and Project Plowshares. She fulfilled a dream by getting her university degree in her late 50s. And these are just a few highlights from a long and active life. Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh used the metaphor of a fallen leaf to express the mystery of the cycle of life and death. He wrote, "One day as I was about to step on a dry leaf, I saw the leaf in the ultimate dimension. I saw that it was really not dead, but that it was merging with the moist soil in order to appear on the tree in the spring in another form. I smiled at that leaf and I said, 'You are pretending. Everything is pretending to be born and pretending to be dying, including that leaf.' The Buddha said, 'When conditions are sufficient, the body reveals itself and the body exists. When conditions are not sufficient, the body cannot be perceived by us, and we say the body does not exist. The day of our death is a day of our continuation in many other forms." Words from Thich Nhat Hanh. Poet Nancy Wood shares her vision of our continuation in many other forms in her poem, A Change of Worlds. When a woman dies, she is not dead. She has merely changed her world instead. Her vision may become that of a tall tree, looking out in all directions at once. Her vision may become that of a tiny ant, with her nose as her horizon. Her vision may include the voice of stars or the humming song of leaves. Who knows? In this world, a woman can also be the warm breath of the summer's wind or the comforting blanket of a winter's snow. In this world, a woman who is a raven is also a woman who is a stone. Each living thing has lived before: the bird, the tree, the woman. Why fear this change of world, my friends? Your courage travels with you. Your example is left behind so that others may know the sweetness of your time. Words from Nancy Wood. Today will first of all be presented by Heather Raitt, Peggy's daughter, and by John Raitt, Peggy's son. So Heather, if you'd like to come forward.
I'm Heather Raitt. Thank you all for coming here today to honor and to remember my mother. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Special thanks to Lynn Nugent and to John Marie Collins. Thank you. In thinking about this memorial service, I struggled with what I wanted to say. These are the things about my mother and my life with her that I want to share with you. During her lifetime, my mother lived with two very big challenges. When she was 5 years old, her father died of heart disease related to rheumatic fever. At the time of his death, her mother was pregnant with Mom's sister, Joan. At 10 years of age, Peggy was sent to England to live with her strict, very elderly grandparents. Her mother and sister remained in the United States. I remember my grandmother as a stern, sarcastic woman. My mother felt rejected and disfavored by her mother. She carried that hurt and pain her entire life. It distorted many aspects of her life, and it took her joy. Her second challenge was her poor hearing. For most of her life, Peggy had a severe hearing impairment. Surgery and hearing aids helped only minimally. She frequently felt isolated and had difficulty at work, in social situations, and in public lectures. By the time she was in her 50s, studying to get a Bachelor of Arts degree, it had become a very great impediment. From the age of 90 on, she could not hear over the telephone. The last years of her life, we communicated with her by FaceTime and by writing out messages on a whiteboard. This made it especially difficult for Peggy with the staff and other residents at her senior's home. When I was a child, I made her situation more difficult. For several years, Mom wore a large box hearing aid fastened under her clothes, mid-chest level. As a little child, I was constantly slamming into her and shouting into her hearing aid. I was shrieking, she was clutching and covering her hearing aid and shouting, "Don't shout, don't shout." Peggy was strict regarding spelling, punctuation, and grammar. She edited and proofread papers and manuscripts for university professors. She would cry out in annoyance when she heard a word misused, particularly the word unique. Unique is just unique. There is no very unique, most unique, or highly unique. She would be horrified to hear my husband tease me by saying, "I should have went." She would be pleased to hear me say, "Clarence, it's I should have gone." Mom had an eye for good art and well-made furniture. She went to auctions. Lund's Auctioneers and Appraisers in Victoria was a favorite, and she bought quality antique wooden furniture and art. She rented art from art galleries and hung it in our home, and bought Inuit prints and sculpture. Peggy liked camping and walking outdoors. When John and I were young, our family camped in a Volkswagen van modified by my father. John slept across the front seats and I slept at the back over the engine. In 1957, we traveled in the van in Europe for 12 weeks. One memorable day, Peggy made John and I eggnog for lunch. Her recipe was raw egg, milk, nutmeg, and a very, very brief stir. I complained it was yucky, slimy. She insisted we drink it because it was nutritious, but we poured it out the little narrow back windows in the van. When the van stopped, there was the raw egg mess, dried in a trail down each side of the van. She was absolutely furious. 12 weeks in Europe, and all I remember is that eggnog incident. After John and I left home, Mom continued her outdoor activities. She joined the Rocky Mountain Ramblers, then Scraston's outdoor club. For years, she drove everywhere with a canoe paddle in her car, just in case she came across a canoe. In many things, she was a nonconformist and ahead of her time. She was an intellectual and a career woman at a time when her peers were full-time homemakers. She divorced at a time when it was frowned upon and much more difficult to get a divorce. She went to university and obtained a Bachelor of Arts degree in her 50s. She was an early environmentalist, avid recycler, feminist, and was supportive of the gay community. Peggy was raised in the Church of England, but the Calgary and Victoria Unitarian Church communities were a very important part of her life. There, she found acceptance, intellectual stimulation, and spiritual healing. I think my mother's greatest life passions were reading and learning. That has been her greatest legacy and gift to me and our son, a love of books and a drive to learn and understand life and the world. I am grateful for that legacy.
Thank you, Heather. We'll now hear from John.
Good afternoon. I'm John Raitt, Peggy Raitt's son. Although if Peggy were here, I'm sure she would correct me. Your name's Jonathan, not John. I'm reminded of the time she called my phone number in Fort McMurray 3 times in a row, only to be told each time by the 12-year-old son of the woman I was living with at the time, there is no Jonathan at this number. My mother was not the easiest person in the world to get along with. Some of you may be aware that for a period of 10 or 12 years after I moved back to Vancouver, I chose not to communicate with my mother. That was my choice, not hers. But after a while, what seemed important at one time no longer seemed to matter. And I eventually let her back into my life. Many of the things that were important to her established themselves in me. She was not a poet, but she loved poetry, and particular poets like Leonard Cohen, Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca, and the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I must admit, as a pre-adolescent child, I resented feeling compelled to listen to the entire long play album of Dylan Thomas reading A Child's Christmas in Wales every Christmas Eve for what seemed about 4 years running. Nevertheless, it must have grown on me, as did her overall love of poetry. It was around about that same time I remember being given by mother a large golden book of poems for children, though only one stands out after all this time, 60 years later. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up the old inn door. The Highwayman by Alfred Knowles. It still appeals to my romantic nature. Mother was involved in many social justice activities. Recycling was one such case, but I would often be left shaking my head at the incongruence of her behaviors. For a while, she dutifully sorted out her papers, bottles, and cans for the recycling depot. She would at the same time pick up 3 copies of each and any pamphlet that was available and left out. One for herself, one for a friend, and one just in case. Perhaps that was a throwback to her younger days during the Great Depression. When mother was preparing for her death a number of years ago, it was extremely important to her that her body be donated to science, the ultimate act of recycling. She left instructions for my sister Heather and me to contact the University of Calgary Faculty of Medicine, and they would be pleased to take her. She had the forms already filled out. Unfortunately, her weight had dropped considerably, and though they thanked us and her for her gift, they could no longer consider taking her. I don't believe in coincidences. And the month since my mother died, I've seen several appeals from the University of British Columbia Medical Sciences for bodies to assist in their training. Their donations have dropped off due to the pandemic. I have since contacted them. I am completing my forms, and all going well, I'll be able to fulfill what my mother was not able to. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse, Bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Thank you.
I now invite you all into a time of quiet remembering. I'll ring the chimes and we will have silence for close to a minute, somewhere in there. That'll be an opportunity for you to just be with your memories of Peggy. And then afterwards, we will share our memories for those of you that are comfortable with speaking out of memory. And I hope most of you will. And if not, that's okay. We all have different comfort levels with microphones and so on. So what I'm going to do is ring the chimes. We'll go into a time of quiet remembering. And then when I ring the chimes again, we will have our open sharing at the microphone. Stories and sharing our memories that we keep Peggy alive in our hearts. I'm going to start off. Bev Weber companioned Peggy for 8 years and has sent me some memories of Peggy's later years. Bev says, Peggy enjoyed the hymns at church and she would sing along with them. She was a news junkie and always had CBC on in the background. She enjoyed Rick Mercer and Vinyl Cafe. We would listen to them regularly. She was an avid reader and loved going to the library. I would often find several books that she'd picked up from the library in the nursing home in her room. We would go for drives through the mountains and do picnics on our drive. Sometimes on our drives, we would stop for maple walnut ice cream in Cochrane or a Tim Hortons tea and eclair. She had a sweet tooth, especially chocolate and eclairs. She also enjoyed her rare roast beef dinner at our house on Sunday evening suppers. I put a bird feeder up outside of her window and she would watch the birds and she would get upset when the squirrels came. She enjoyed her Guinness and her Harvey Bristol Cream Sherry, and there'll be more of that later. Peggy always had a tea in her hand with 2 milk, but never cream. So thank you to Bev for sharing that with us all. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and share a memory of Peggy? If you wish to remain in your seat, I can also bring the microphone to you. Okay, Jack, lovely.
I'm going to play a song after I talk for a few minutes, and that might people say with me, but yeah, I do. You know, I do remember the first time that I became aware of Peggy. I had probably seen her at church before, but I was sitting somewhere over here, and Peggy came in a little later than me, and she like snuggled right up to me, and I turned and she had this big smile on her face, and I was kind of like, okay, what's this about? But it kind of took me back a little bit, and then I just we became good friends, and she loved to have me pick her up and bring her to church, and would phone me and make arrangements for that. So just bless her for being such a she had challenges for sure, but she didn't let those, get in the way of what she wanted to do. And she definitely wanted to be in church, and loved being here. I had some of my story sort of taken when you're talking about the sweets. So when I would take her to, sometimes I would take her for an appointment to pick up some of her medications. And then she would always do some banking and pick up medications. And then she would like, okay, let's go to Tim Hortons. And and so there it wasn't necessarily Claire's, it was Boston cream donut. Every time she had a Boston cream donut. And no, that was fun. But she didn't really complain, but she's like, they don't really serve me this in the in my senior center. So no, it was wonderful to hear people talk about Peggy and to learn more about her life. Because she was so hard of hearing, it was really hard for me to carry on kind of a deep dialogue with her, I guess. But I got the sense that she had a very, very keen intelligence and a deep sense of humor too. So we would usually have a good chuckle about something. But this church, and to me, one of the very valued things it does is the community outreach and also the support. It's a caring community. So all the people who lovingly gave of their time to help Peggy out a little bit, we were definitely rewarded. So I'm going to sing a song. It's going to be, and I'm going to ask you to join the chorus. It's "You Are My Sunshine," which you all know, but don't sing the verses because I might get confused, because sometimes we remember things a little differently. So, but I invite you to sing on the chorus. So Marie Collins phoned me or messaged me earlier in the week and asked me if I would come in and say a few words. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'd be delighted to do that. So, and Peggy asked me several times, I don't know if she could hear my voice, but she said, "You gotta sing at my funeral." So here I am. So that's one of her wishes. That's come true. Are you just to sing or not? Okay. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, when I lay sleeping, I dreamt I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and I cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Well, please don't take my sunshine away. We'll always miss her and think about her. Our dear Peggy is still with us. And if you need to think about her, get a smile on your face. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Thank you so much, Jack. Is there anyone else who would like to either come up and share memory, or if you want me to bring the mic to you? Would you like the mic, or you'll come up? With somebody who knows how to adjust that, or I can just give you the mic to hold if you prefer.
Titch, and I'm the professor emerita in the Faculty of Social Work, so I should back off. And I certainly am not going to be able to perform the way we just heard. I was just at a tennis clinic, and I was saying to people I'm leaving to go because I need to get to this funeral. And then I told them a little about Peggy. And I said, and this is one time that I know for sure that we will be celebrating. It'll be a celebration of life. I'm here really to represent some people who are nodding at me there: Joan Spindler, Lila Anderson, Iris Hillenbrand, and maybe there are others who can speak of those years when Peggy was in our Faculty of Social Work, and we were, our social welfare, it changed names a few times. But she was in what we had the reading room in the library, which was unique until they took it away from us. But Peggy was there, and I've been so moved listening to everyone here, because moved to tears of happiness for her and that she lived a full life, but also regret that I didn't know so much about her. You know, I wish I had known some of the things that I've learned here from the speeches and from the words in here, because it would have helped me understand. For one thing, I would have figured out why she scared me so much. Because she did, she was tough, and I think, but she was always helpful. She was so sharp and so helpful in all the things that she did. And I'm sure that my three colleagues there could echo and bring other stories. She really was extremely helpful. Another colleague of ours, Richard Ramsey, was commenting not so long ago about what an editor she was. She was supremely good at editing. And so I remain incredibly thankful and joyful for her, and wish her all the best in wherever she is.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mitch Mitchell. I'm part of the tech team and a longtime member of the church. Not as long as Peggy, but I knew her for the last, as soon as I joined the church and she picked up on the fact that I was kind of a techie, she said, I need help getting my PC going so I can do email with Heather. That was important. So we got her a PC, and I took it up to her little condo, and we set that up, and she called me back and said, now my phone isn't working. Can you come and help me with my phone? And then she wanted to do something, I forget what else, something else with her PC. John, I need you. So Sundays, I got to get used to saying, oh, there she is. Hi, Peggy, how are things going? Okay, sure, I'll be up on Tuesday. I really was impressed with her willingness and interest and her excitement about learning new bits of technology, even up in her 80s like that. And it was a pleasure to help me, for me to help her. I came away with three thank yous from her. One was a bottle of Bristol cream sherry, which I think is a recurring theme today. A bar fridge. Turned out that she had entered a contest at the Co-op liquor store. Of course, she went to the Co-op liquor store, and she'd won this bar fridge, and she didn't have room for it. She thought maybe I might find a spot for it in my life, and I did. And the last thing I thought that was really interesting was a Sinclair ZX21 PC, one of the early pre-IBM PCs, in it with its original case and the original instruction manual and some mimeograph notes from the University of Calgary Computer Club telling you how to use it. So that's now in my basement. I plan to get to use it sometime soon. Anyway, I loved Peggy, and it was great seeing her, and I miss her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My memories are totally different from what I've been spoken here. They're all from the university. But oh, here, okay. Anyway, as that was noted, she worked in the resource center, and many of the professors, like Mary, appreciated what she had to offer, and her input on the English spoken correctly. But I remember one time, one of our professors, they wrote papers and submitted them for publication, so they had to be correct. So Dr. Ishmael, she was ready to submit it, and I said, "Could I make a suggestion? Would you get Peggy just to go over it one more time?" And she did, and she found another mistake. So they said Peggy could find mistakes at 6 paces. Anyway, but also in our personal life, we had a good time. We went, she always had in line where to go and what to do, and things were going on, like the Mennonite church, not too far from here. There was a display of their quilts, and they're famous for their quilts. And only saw the quilts, but saw the history of them, right? And the history of the Mennonites. And there was so many things that we did together that was inspired by Peggy, and I appreciate all of them. But we used to, she lived close to me, and she could come down for a meal, and she enjoyed being with my husband too, because he was German, so they had a lot of some sort of head-to-head conversations. But Jonathan, she never forgot you for sure. She bragged about you a lot when you're up in Fort McMurray. And she brought me the taped edition of On Golden Pound that you did. And she was very proud of that. And I knew you long before I met you. And so anyway, that's good. Lots of more we can say, but I'll leave it for another time. Thank you very much. And they'll
Hi, my name's Susan Ridley, and lots of you know that I was absent from church for quite a period of time due to various challenges in my life. And because of that, I'm very sad that I didn't get to know Peggy better. But like Lynn, I met her about 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago now, when I joined the church. And she just had this presence about her that was just so down to earth, no nonsense, no BS, whoops, sorry. And I just loved her for that. Absolutely loved her. And as the two matriarchs of my family, my mom and an aunt, my dad's sister, who also, like Peggy, well, she never married at all, but she was an intellectual and career woman long before it was the thing to do. And so when I'm listening to Heather and John today, it's just your history is so much like mine and my mother's. And my mother did, it wasn't exactly truthful, but my aunt, let me tell you, she was exactly like Peggy and just such a positive influence. But I just admire people like that who tell it like it is, and they don't fuss around with nonsense. And my husband had an aunt like that too. And a few years I got to know her before I had to stop coming, and then I never sort of hooked up with her again. So anyway, she was just amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, and my mother's favorite drink is Crystal Cream Sherry too. In fact, we toasted her for her anniversary of her passing. It was Grey Cup Sunday this past year, and my son immediately said, "Well, aren't we getting the sherry out for Graham?" Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks. I hadn't planned on this, but give me a microphone and I'm good. My name is Jan Stewart, and I have been buddies with Peggy for, I don't even know how long. It's been that long. I also have a hearing loss. I was born hard of hearing. So like Peggy, I wore the box style hearing aid when I was a young girl growing up and was ostracized. I also wore glasses, so I was also called all kinds of names, you know, the 4 eyes and all that sort of stuff. And guess what? I was also left-handed. So when I started school, my mom said, you know, she wears the hearing aid, she has to wear the glasses, please don't change her left hand. So Peggy and I shared a lot of stories like that. And she was always so empathetic, but you were just a young girl. I was 2 years of age when I was diagnosed. So we go way back, ranch lands and the lots of stuff in her house. My mother is a year older, almost to the day, than her. And her daughter, Heather, is a year younger than me. So we would talk about a lot of different things. And Jonathan, oh yes, it was always Jonathan, you know, never John. My husband's middle name was John, and she saw that one time and she says, well, I hope you don't go by John. He says, well, my name is Steve, and I am called Steve. So my husband grew to know Peggy as well. We were often, you know, in social situations, and I guess, you know, we kind of globbed onto each other because both being hard of hearing, we understood what it was like. I guess the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, Calgary branch, is my latest and greatest memory. Peggy and I were both volunteers there. I was there 15 years, and I'm sure she was there as long as that. We had annual conferences all across Canada, and they were always during May, Hearing Awareness Month. And when I became a volunteer executive member, we got some funding from casinos, and I said, you know, we need to send a lot of people to these conferences from Calgary. So we got permission that we could send a handful, maybe 6 people, but they had to come back and they had to talk about what they learned at the conference. And that was part of the agreement. Peggy's hand went up first. I want to go. I want to go. Where are we going? Well, we went to a lot of places. We went to Kelowna. And that's when I first met you, Heather. We were at the conference there, and I think I dropped her off at your place out in West Bank, I want to say. Yes. Okay. See, I'm not making this up. My memories, you know, of all of these dates and everything is a little off maybe, but and she was talking about, you know, staying there with her daughter and grandchildren, and that was great. And then we also came up with one, the one that most memorable was in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, and I had never been past Quebec City. So I said, well, I'm going to this conference. And I said, and if anybody else wants to go, I'll be the travel agent and I'll book the flights and I will book bed and breakfast outside of the conference dates if you want to stay longer. Again, Peggy's hand was right up there. She says, no, I'll go to AMA and I'll do my own. And I said, well, you know, if we do it as a group, you know, it might be more beneficial. And so she said, okay, well, I'll let you do that. So that was good. You know, she was the boss of herself. So I booked, the conferences were usually on a Thursday and ended on a Sunday, or maybe carried over to Monday, but typically that was the conference. You know, there was a fee, there was speakers. We had listening devices like you would not believe. And that's why I came up here, because Peggy would never forgive me if I didn't stand in front of everybody and make sure everybody could see my lips and see my expression on my face, because I was also a speech reading, lip reading instructor for 20 years with Deaf and Hard of Hearing Society in Calgary. I taught level 1, 2, and 3, and Peggy came to every one of those levels, 10-week courses. And she moved on to the next one and the next one. And then she wanted to go back again. I said, no, I think you need to put your lip reading skills and your coping skills to practice. You know, you need to, as a matter of fact, that picture was taken, I believe, at the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association picnic, and I took it. Yes, I have, because every picture I took, and she wanted pictures, right? Back in the day when, you know, we made actual physical copies of, I always made sure she had one. And I believe that one was taken before one of her birthdays, because her birthday was in July. And she said, you know, could we maybe have the annual barbecue a little bit later? Like, I said, well, how much later? Because people are going away. So we would do it towards the end of June, early July. How about the 10th? And I went, well, the 10th is on Tuesday, so not everybody could come then, you know. But she made it very well known that that was her birthday, and she dolled all up. And I can see, I believe, the little tents in the behind there. Was that from her collection? Yeah, because I looked at that, I went, wait a minute, I took that picture. So yeah, again, there she is, all dolled up and ready to have fun. But this was a hard of hearing conference. These were hard of hearing people, some deaf that have no hearing at all. So there was lots of captioning, there was lots of amplification, there was lots of lip reading and making sure everybody could hear everybody else. There was Peggy often, you know, with her severe hearing loss, having to write things down, which is fine. And we all felt so at home, because anybody that was there that was hearing, you guys were the odd man out. Not us, right? So it was awesome. So getting to this story, I had booked the bed and breakfast, and she came to me after the conference and she said, well, I hope that you can get out of my reservation at this bed and breakfast. I said, well, we're all staying at the same house, so it's just a room, you know. I said, why? What's going on? And she said, well, I've decided, and I'm not sure if she was in her 90s then. I mean, my mom died at 96, and she kept saying they're just going to keep going along, you know. But anyway, she said, well, you know, I looked into taking a bus up to Gross Mourne, the provincial park. And I went, well, that sounds awesome. And she said, who knows if I'm ever going to make it back here, and I'm going to take the opportunity to do it. So I said, well, do you need any help with, oh, no, I'm good. You've booked me this far, just to let you know that I'm not staying in the room. I'm going to head up there. And I said, well, Peggy, we've booked return flights from here to Calgary. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, okay. I said, but you may be able to change it and you can fly out of Gross Mourne. I said, do you want some help with that? And she said, you know what? My husband was on this trip as well, and we'd stayed longer, and some other friends that live there, we stayed to visit. She said, no, that's okay. I'll look after it. And I went, okay. She did it. She took a bus up to Gross Mourne. She went all through there. I never got to see it, darn. And flew out of there. I'm not even sure what the airport is there, but she flew out of that area back to Calgary, canceled the other flight. So that's who Peggy was to me. She was my buddy. She was my mom. She was just so much to me. And when I read about it in the paper, I must say, though, I did lose touch with her after Confederation Park. And I was still working at that time. I retired in 2013. And I used to go to the Confederation a lot to do presentations and everything. And Peggy was always saying, Jan, you got to go do this. Jan, you got to do that. And I said, well, you got to come. She said, oh, I'll be there. Don't worry, as my support person, right? So after that, we kind of lost touch a little bit. And I kept asking other people in the organization, both where I worked, Deaf and Hard of Hearing Society and the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, where we volunteered, so does anybody know what happened to Peggy? And we all went, well, she's going to live to be over 100. You know that. So, so I'm really thrilled that I saw it in the paper. I spread the word to a few other associates that and colleagues that I still keep in touch with. Some of them, are a little hesitant with COVID. And I will say to you, I really, I feel bad that I didn't keep in touch with Peggy, because the last 2 years that this mask wearing has come about have been on my mental health just absolutely horrendous. I can't read lips through a mask. And as a young child growing up, I learned to lip read just naturally. So I often thought of Peggy, and I thought of, my old colleagues about, oh, how horrible this has been. I still wear a mask. I'm also a volunteer driver with the Cancer Society, so I have to wear one in the car and, protect those vulnerable that I'm driving to their cancer appointments. But it's been really, really hard. I'm going on a plane tomorrow, and we're leaving to go visit my grandsons in Ontario for the first time in 3 summers. And I'm just so hoping that the mask is going to be a lot less when we get there. So, if you think of that and you think of Peggy and just generally hard of hearing people, having a little patience and just, thinking that, well, maybe they can't hear. It's, I was always struggling throughout my life that people said, oh, she's rude, she walks away. Well, I can't hear you from behind. So a tap on the shoulder helps. Things like if you have an accent or a mustache, and it's hard to lip read even. So Peggy was my hero, and she was also my dear friend. And I was so glad that it was today that I could come, because I'm leaving for my first trip in 2.5 years. And I really wanted to come and honor her life, because I was a great part of it. One thing I would like to say to you is I did try to go into my boxes of pictures, and I do have some, but perhaps I could get, when we have a little social, I can get your contact information, and I'm be happy to give you a lot more maybe than you have, Heather. So if you'd like that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So this will be our last formal one in here, and I really strongly encourage you to share with the family after we have that cherry toast.
I'm going to tell a story that I probably shouldn't tell, but there's another little aspect to Peggy that I know from years ago that clearly none of the rest of you know. So Heather and I have known Peggy, I guess, since the early 80s, when Heather and I were in vet school, well, or in different years, but going to vet school together. And I got to know Peggy pretty well and feel badly that in recent years, once busy with work and kids and all that kind of stuff, we didn't stay in as close touch as we did in the beginning. But early on, before email and all that, electronic communication, we were letter writing, and we would write letters back and forth really quite a bit. And I would send long letters, and I would get even longer letters back, which I think sometimes drove Heather crazy, because I got probably more and longer letters at that point than Heather did. did, because I was into recycling. I was into big time environmental stuff, Project Plowshares from way back. I corrected everybody's grammar, which my kids have since thanked me for, but it took a long time before that happened. So we had a lot of things in common that Heather and I would laugh about. But there was another more regular human aspect to Heather, or to Peggy. And I can remember at Heather's graduation from vet school, we were there and it was the formal dinner for at the vet school, and it was a buffet and we were all there, and I think I had a date or something. Otherwise I wouldn't have been there because we were 4 years apart. Anyway, we were all formal, all our professors were there, the speeches, a very sort of officious kind of affair. And we were going through the buffet table and it was our time to go through. And Heather and I, Peggy for some reason got through first. And I don't know if it was like, anyway, she got through first. Heather and I were at the start of the line, and we were just starting to load up on the salads and things at the front of the thing. And we could hear this voice, and I'm sure it relates to Depression time, wartime, some hearing issues, all those things. But we could hear this voice, and then this silence in the room with Heather, Heather. And we looked up, and our professors and everybody else looked up and said, Heather, don't take so much. There's meat down here. So she was all the things that I've heard today, and such a wonderful, admirable, productive, highbrow, intellectual person. But there were moments where she was kind of a regular person, like me and the rest of us too. So it was wonderful that Peggy was part of my life too. And I know this is a difficult day on all kinds of levels, and I'm happy to be here.
So I'm sure there are more stories out there, and I encourage you to continue to share them as we move from this place into Wickenden Hall and toast Peggy and share coffee and tea and sandwiches together. Our closing words are by Reverend Kathleen McTeague. What do you think has become of the old men, the young and the old men? And what do you think has become of the women and the children? Asks Walt Whitman in Leaves of Grass. Surely we carry them with us. Their wisdom and love are rooted in our own minds and hearts, rising to the surface unexpectedly from time to time, mingling inseparably with our own thoughts and visions. The great cloud of witnesses who have lived and died before us breathe out to us in all the forms of life our sweet world devises. They are all around us. The ancient Celts had it right. The separation between the living and the dead is thin as a veil, but not just in the darkening of the year. It is always there. If we quiet ourselves enough, we can still hear their voices there in our own hearts beating. Another of Peggy's favorite songs was Spirit of Life. For many years here in this congregation, we would end our services by singing Spirit of Life. And so we do this today in honor of Peggy's long commitment to the Unitarian congregation here in Calgary.
Please join in with us.
Stirs
Our chalice extinguishing words are adapted from Reverend Michelle Buite. We have honored and celebrated Peggy's life, the lives she touched, the legacy she leaves. As we extinguish our chalice, we release old wounds and regrets. We forgive and are forgiven. We cherish the life we shared, the life that is larger than us. Out of the mystery, we are born, and mystery receives us when we die.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings